Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I just want to, where everyone's coming in from the waiting room here, give just 1 second. But as you, I hope, are aware, we're here for FinEquity's tool workshop today, talking about using financial diaries to analyze the women's market. And we have a great lineup of organizations and speakers today. And we'll also have a chance for all of you to ask questions, both in plenary and then in small groups, to kind of dig in a little further with our guests today from MSC, Lyft, and FinBit, who have a lot of experience with financial diaries research. We're a sizable group, so we won't have time for introductions, but I welcome all of you just to, in the chat, introduce yourselves. If you'd like to put your LinkedIn profile in there, and we can continue to connect after this workshop in that way. I will do that in just a minute. And then with that, let's get started. If you wouldn't mind, Annika, next slide. Okay, excellent. So as I mentioned, we have a great roundup of speakers. We actually have multiple speakers from Lyft, and I won't be able to introduce all of them. But from MSC, we have Rahul Chatterjee and Sonal Jaitley. Rahul is a senior manager at MSC's Data and Insights team. And Sonal is a senior manager and lead of the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion practice. They both have lots of experience and have worked for MSC for many years. I have their full bios on the event page. We can pop that in case you haven't seen it. From Lyft today, we have, it's actually going to be John, Kamau, and Teresa presenting today, but they'll be supported by Anne-Marie Van Swinderen. We will be adding their bios to the page as well. And so Anne-Marie is the founder and managing director of Lyft, which is a research company specialized in financial diary studies. Welcome and thank you to all of our speakers. And I'm sorry, I'll introduce myself as well. I'm a moderator for FinEquity, which is the community of practice for women's financial inclusion that's convened by CGAP here at the World Bank. Great, I think we can shift. Thanks. So the agenda for today, as I mentioned, we'll be hearing from MSC on their financial diary research, their findings, but also their, how they did this. We really want to hear the operational side as well. So that for all of you that are interested in doing this type of research, you have a better sense of what it takes to do this. And then we'll hear the same from Lyft. And Lyft will also be talking about a technology called FinBit that both MSC and Lyft have used to help support this kind of research. And then I'll have a little time for just some Q&A with the panel to dig in a little bit further, and then some time for the audience to pose questions. Because you all are muted, what I'm asking is if you can pop your questions into the chat, and you don't have to wait until this time when we get to the audience Q&A. You can be putting questions in all along as the speakers are presenting, so that you don't forget, and we can see what those questions are and try to answer as many as we can. If we can't get to them, lucky for you, we have small group discussions where you can ask your questions verbally. We'll have a Google Doc where you can also type up, on sticky notes. And that'll be the latter part of the workshop today. So I'll explain how that works when we get there, but essentially you'll have a chance to either go into a room with the folks from MSC, from Lyft, or from FinBit, and to ask more specific questions in a smaller group setting. And then we'll come back to the room and just share kind of highlights from those small groups and wrap up the discussion. So thanks again to everybody who just joined, and please continue to share and introduce yourself in the chat. So this is just a slide I wanted to show. I think we're all aware of the importance of gender data. Just a couple of stats here on the global gender gap in financial institution account ownership, and also in women-owned MSMEs and emerging economies. And one way we think we can narrow the gap is by having better data, right? So that's what this session is about, and it's in order to help us understand who's excluded, which financial products are used by whom. the impacts of financial inclusion on different sectors and different types of users, and then how women's financial needs differ from men, and why. Why do we need to have different products and adapt products in different ways? So I don't think this is news to you all, but just wanted to kind of set the scene with this. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rahul and Sonal, and then we will bring up their presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jenny, for that introduction. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending on whichever part of the globe you are today. I'm Sonal Jetli. I work with the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion practice of MicroSave. And first of all, I want to thank you for taking out time to join this webinar today. And we promise that it's going to be worth your time. So just quickly giving you a brief of MicroSave's financial diaries research. We can go to the first slide. So of course it's the next slide. Of course, it's not no news to all of you in the sector that women face multiple barriers across multiple areas. So as you may already know that MSc works in multiple low-income countries for women's financial inclusion and economic empowerment. And we repeatedly find that women's micro and small enterprises face not just one, but a multitude of problems. And these problems actually emerge from their socioeconomic status in the society, their position in the labor markets, their ability to negotiate also with the state and the market. So these are the big umbrella issues they anyways face. And what we also see is that they remain stagnant in the informal sector. Even when they're doing the most complex cash flow management, they're not able to graduate from the micro to the small to the medium. But of course, we know that they need a continuum of support across critical business services to help their enterprises become more profitable. And of course, one of these most critical needs that we've identified across the continent is the need for finance. And as we all know that most of the informal women entrepreneurs have very volatile incomes. They have complex cash flows. They are vulnerable to the slightest disruption in the external environment. However, at the same time, they also present the largest group, I would say, of unserved and underserved customers who are yet to be tapped by financial service providers. So in order to tap this unserved market, we first need to understand their needs and we need to understand their daily financial lives. So unpacking the daily aspects of their financial lives is where financial diaries come in. We use the financial diaries approach to take a deep dive into their daily financial lives and what those daily lives actually indicate about their financial needs, their financial habits, their financial preferences and aspirations. So this is a brief introduction. We can go to the next slide, Anika. This is a brief introduction to the project that we're working on in Kenya. It's the Financial Diaries Action Research project that focuses on understanding the financial lives of two dominant but extremely overlooked segments of informal women entrepreneurs in Kenya. And these are the open air market traders and the cross-border women traders. So as we know that in Kenya, there are a lot of women-owned enterprises. Again, they remain concentrated in the informal sector, and we specifically pick these two segments to understand their financial needs better and unpack the black box that is their financial lives and try to understand what is it that's going to help them get more profits once we serve their financial needs through different financial products. So with this, I hand over to my colleague Rahul to take you through more details.
Thank you so much, Sonal. Hello, everyone. My name is Rahul Chatterjee, and I am a senior manager in the data and insights team at MSC, and I lead the financial diaries research and the gender research portfolio over here. So in the rest of the slides that we will present, we'll first take you through why this financial diaries approach, what does it bring on the table, how we do it, and what are the broader use cases of it. Then we talk a little about what we are doing in Kenya, the women's traders diaries that we are doing. Then we talk about a few insights from this particular research. And then we will conclude about 4 different use cases that we think are the best ones for using financial diaries research. So first, let's understand about the diaries research and why we have this financial diaries approach. The next slide, please. Yeah. So financial diaries here, this is a method where we track the daily financial transaction of our target group to understand all the aspects of their life, especially their financial life. Now, first question comes, why we do a particular research approach like financial diaries? What is the problem with a normal survey? But just think for a moment that if you are not a salaried person, you are either in agriculture, or you are a wage laborer, or you are in a runner enterprise, which are mostly the common among the low and middle income segments. So then you do not have a fixed income stream. Sometimes you earn more, sometimes you earn less. Sometimes you are poor and sometimes you are not. So just going to them once and understanding their whole the situation of their financial life is not possible. You have to understand it as a whole by tracking them for a period, at least for a year, because seasonality plays an important role in their financial life. At the time of, say, some environmental calamity or some part of the year, you earn very less. When you if you earn less, your expenditure are low, and then you also have to think how do you cope up with it? You come up with some loans or you draw with your savings, etc. So if you track the whole gamut of 12 months, then only you will understand how it is. And why track their financial life? Because if you want to understand mostly anything about a people's life, their economic conditions, their health situation, their educational situation, their food habits, how do they run their agriculture, how do they run their business, how do they borrow, how do they save, any of this, then the best way is track the money. If you track their financial data, you will understand a whole lot of things about their life. Here are these 2 graphs from a collaborative effort called Corner Shop Diaries between Lyft and MSC. So these 2 graphs, the first one, you can see it is showing that over a period of 1 year, the overall net, the monthly profit of male enterprise owners are more than female. So they are earning more. So there is an income that exists, and this is not just fluke. And now think, if you had kept this checked this data on January or February, you might have found out that there is no difference at all. But if you see the other times of the year, especially from May onwards, you can actually see the difference. So that's the beauty and power of this financial diaries approach. It can actually show you the real picture. The second graph, these are different types of personal expenses. You can see the food-related expenses are the maximum, followed by transport-related expenses, then followed by expenses on toiletries and hygiene items, and the least are religious-related expenses. So this was during COVID times. So school, college, etc., those education expenses were not that much. So this is how, by tracking the financial data, you can talk a lot about the life. So that's why we go with this financial diaries approach. And another very important thing is, it is not just a quantitative data. You also understand the reasons behind that. For example, in March, in the second graph, you can see there is a spike in their food expenses. Why so? You would know that because the data collectors do a lot of discussion. We'll come to that part in latter part of the presentation. And so it is a mix of qualitative and quantitative data, and that's why it can give you such powerful narratives. The next slide, please. So MSC has been doing financial diaries research across Asia and Africa. we have mostly worked in India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Kenya, and we have run different types of diaries research. We have done diaries research on corner shops in partnership with Lyft. We have diaries research on informal enterprises. We have done diaries research on cash in, cash out agents or DC agents. We have also done research on, in general, the low and middle income people, on women traders, on women run businesses. And some of these research are very large scale one. For example, the one in Bangladesh that we're running on women run businesses, it is, I think, world's largest research on women entrepreneurs, which having a 500 sample whom we are tracking for 1 year, solely focusing on women entrepreneurs. So this is a little about what MSc has been doing. The next slide, please. So in the financial diaries research, what exactly do we do? We collect data on their financial life, all the cash in and all the cash out. So we ask about the income earned from different sources, the business related expenses, their personal expenses, that is the household expenses on food, on education, on health, on toiletries, and all of these things is personal expenses. Any savings that they have deposited in some tool, any savings that they have withdrawn from some tools, the loans that they have given, the loans they have taken, and the loans that they're repaying and they are getting paid back by the borrowers. So we ask about all of these financial data, and that's how we do it. And this financial diaries itself, for many of the, especially for the enterprise owners with whom MSc has done a lot of diaries research, for them, many of them, especially the nano and micro enterprises, this is the first formal exercise to do a formal kind of a bookkeeping, to actually see their income and expenses and using that knowledge to improve their businesses. So the diaries research, except being a core research, it also has some other benefits to help them. It can also be thought of as an intervention as well. The next slide, please. And why we're calling it just diaries research instead of financial diaries? Because it can goes beyond financial data. We can use it in many thematic areas. We can use it for gender norms on mobility and agency. We can do it on water and sanitation practices. We can do it to understand the gig work, how they do different types of work, how they interact with the digital, different platforms that give them work. We can also do it for climate change adaptation and mitigation, to understand the coping strategies and how people are actually adapting and mitigating to climate change, to understand people's digital behavior, how they're interacting with the various digital platforms and what is coming up, and farmers' diaries, that is on their farming practices, which type of inputs that they are getting, which type of inputs that they're using. So it can be used for a different type, various types of thematic areas. And that's why instead of just financial diaries, we can call it diaries research in general as a broad matter. Yeah, and the next slide. So now with this brief introduction, we'll come to one particular diaries research that MSc has been doing in Kenya, which we are calling women traders diaries. Here we are targeting only women traders, which two particular groups, open air market traders and cross-border traders. That means who do these transactions and who do their business across the borders in Tanzania or in Uganda. Next slide. So this is in general, how do we do this research? In Kenya, we are doing this research across 7 locations. Some of them are in the border areas, and some of them are having the open air markets inside the country. We started with 100 diarists. We tracked them for a period of 3 weeks, and then we selected a sample of 30 diarists, and we continued them for a period of 1 year. And this research is still going on. How do we do it? We first recruit the diarist. We go to them, we pitch the idea that this is what we are going to do, and then who are interested, we recruit them, and we do a detailed profiling of their financial data as well as their demographic and business related or their livelihood related profiling. Once this thing is done, then we provide a hard copy of a printed format to the diarists, where they record their daily financial transaction, everything, their cashing, all the cashings, all the cash out, their income, expenses, savings, credit, all of this. So they record it here. We train them how to use this format. And once that is done, then we have field researchers on the ground who actually are the point person between us and the diarists. So they train the diarists about how to fill it up. and then they visit the diaries on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, depending on the design of the study, and they digitize this data. So we use an app called DAT-in, the short form for Data and Insights, that MSc uses internally for the diaries research. And using that app, the data collectors, they digitize the data, and they also during these visits, when the data collectors or the field researchers visit the diaries, it is not just digitizing the data. They also do a lot of discussion. So building this trust is of utmost importance for any diaries research, because we are not just going to find out some hard data. We are also looking to find out the various stories and the stories behind this data. So over time, when the diaries become quite free in terms of communication with the field researchers, they share their life story. They share what is happening, when the income is high, how they are using the money. When the income is low, how are they coping? When the income is low and the expenses are high, how are they trying to get some more money? Are they taking loan? Are they withdrawing their deposits from savings? What they're doing? So all these things and whatever is happening in their life. So these discussions, it is a very so all of these nuances come to the field researchers and in terms to us. The data is so on a bi-weekly basis or a weekly basis, we are getting the data from the field. Then we check the data for inconsistencies, or for also we check whether there is missing value, whether there are outliers, how the data is, whether there is any inconsistency. And we prepare a data query sheet where we list down all these queries, and then we share it with the field researcher, and they in turn let us know what are the issues are, and then if any corrections are required, the corrections are made in the data. So this is how on a regular basis whether a data flows from the field to us. Next slide. So now we talk about a few insights. In this slide, we talk about one diarist from our Kenya. So her name is Catherine, and he is a handicraft trader from Gikomba open air market in Nairobi, Kenya. So, one of her major buyer is Africa Heritage, which is an organization that does bulk purchase from the handicraft traders, and then they export those handicrafts. So, and this data in this slide, we're presenting 1 day of data of Catherine, and you will see, and I'm sure you will appreciate how complex and how dynamic their financial life is. First, talk about their sales revenue. On that particular day, she sold items worth 15,000 Kenyan shilling to the retail buyers who just came to the shop and bought items. And the same day, there is a big order from Africa Heritage, and she sold items of 100,000 Kenyan shilling worth, and she got this money in her M-Pesa account. So she got money both cash and as well as in M-Pesa account. Now, what are her expenses? There are business expenses, like she bought stocks through M-Pesa of 15,000 shilling. She also paid for her transport, and she has also bought another shop in the Westlands area in Nairobi, and she paid for the rent. Then there are some personal expenses. She paid for her house rent, there was lunch expenses, and she also bought airtime. So these are her income and expenses. You can see how many different topics are here. Then there are savings and credit. On that particular day, she saved 300 shilling in a chama in cash, and then there is savings in a bank through M-Pesa of 7,000 shilling. She doesn't have any loan, so she is using two savings tool, the bank account and the chama, and using multiple different ways, cash as well as the M-Pesa. And she's using mental models to take financial decisions. She keeps substantial amount in M-Pesa wallet as well as in cash, because she doesn't know when the suppliers will come to her, and she needs that hard cash in her hand or in M-Pesa account so that she can buy stocks from the supplier whenever the supplier visits her. So that's why he needs that cash handy. She cannot deposit it to a bank account. So that's it. That is how the financial life is, and how she is using mental models to take these financial decisions. Next slide. We also found that these women traders, they're not a monolithic or a homogeneous group. So we used a segmentation approach by developing a composite index. We used a couple of variables like the type of mobile phone that they use, whether they use mobile money or not, whether they have a savings bank account, whether they take major decisions about the business by themselves, how do they manage the record for their inventory, and how do they do their bookkeeping. Based on these variables, we came up with a composite score, and that based on that score, we came up with 3 different segments. And we are calling it as segments based on sophistication, how sophisticated the business is. We could find that 39% of the business are highly sophisticated, 33% are moderately sophisticated, and 28% are low in sophistication. Next slide. And if you see the financial data, we can also see, which is actually intuitive, and we are very happy to see this trend, that the financial data for the highly sophisticated, they earn a lot than the other. Then comes the earning, in terms of earning, then comes the moderately sophisticated ones, and then come the low sophisticated ones. And the highly sophisticated ones, they use the mobile banking also more, and then comes the moderately sophisticated, and then the low sophistication. Now, what does this data tell us? It gives us some ideas. Like, for example, when the income is not that much, this especially the low sophisticated ones, they need loans, but they do not have a collateral. So can there be some gender intentional financial products be designed where they can have they can have collateral free loans when there is a need, or whether they need to be an individual loans or group lending models. Secondly, when we see the case for Catherine, that she has this daily need to pay the suppliers. Sometimes, in case she doesn't have cash, what will happen? Can she borrow money from somewhere in using any financial products to borrow money, so that she can finance her supply chain? That is a supply chain financing kind of things. So these kind of ideas for products and services can be generated from this kind of diaries research analysis. Next slide. So now we will conclude with the last slide. The next one, please. With 4 use cases, what we can do with this is the last slide. So what we can do with the diaries research? It can give us understanding about your target group. So whoever your target group is, so they can help you. You can get very nuanced understanding about your target group. What are their needs and aspirations? How do they see their businesses or their life? What are their financial life? Where do they need help? So you can get a whole lot of a 360-degree view of understanding about the target group. It is not, and this goes beyond financial life. In Bangladesh, what we are doing, we are getting a complete 360-degree view of the women business owners, their business life, their financial life, their digital life, their decision making, their risk management capacities, as well as their household life. So we are getting a complete picture of them. Where do they need help? Where do they need support? Where we can do just a little hand holding to make them do better. So that this research approach is so nuanced that it can give you a great data about your target group. You can test multiple hypotheses and conduct experiments. So if you have a large enough sample for this diaries research, like we are doing it in Bangladesh with 500 diarists, so there you can also learn various interventions and experiment it with them and see which intervention works and which doesn't work. And if you have any hypothesis, you can test multiple hypotheses throughout the period. As it is a longitudinal research for a period of 1 year, you can test multiple hypotheses about your target groups during this research. And when you are testing an intervention, you can also assess the impact of it. So this can be used for an impact evaluation method, and it can also goes beyond the general approaches like difference in difference or RDD or a baseline endline, where you can just come to know a fact that whether this intervention worked or did not work. But here, as this is a longitudinal data, it can also show you the pathway, how things change, if it changed, and when it did not change, why did it not change? So this establishing this pathway is something very unique to this kind of research approach. And last but not the least, it can help you to design products and services. In this Women Traders Diaries in Kenya, we are working with Equity Bank and KWFT to design financial products for their women clientele. So we are using this diaries research approach, the insights, as well as other insights. And we are working with these financial institutions to create gender-centric products and services. And we are trying to do the same in the Bangladesh, where we are onboarding partners. So here I will stop now. I'm sure we'll discuss a lot more about this during today's session. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Rahul. And we're going to switch now to the lift presentation. And thank you for those of you who have been posing questions in the chat. I've been trying to respond, and some of them are for our speakers, so I'll invite them to respond as well. But now I'd like to go ahead and switch to the lift team here. We're going to have John and Teresa joining us to present their financial
No,
diary.
I will present this part, sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay. All right. We'll start off with Anne-Marie and then we'll, oops, I see I'm not actually on the screen. Okay. And then we'll switch to the rest of the team. So thank you. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
Hello, everybody. I'm Anne-Marie van Swinderen. I'm the Managing Director of Lyft. And I'll present about how can financial diaries data serve to develop products for women. So if you go to the next slide, you see that we've been active on diaries in a lot of countries. And in several of them, we have worked on product development. That's the next slide. Particularly right on the right is Myanmar. And there I'll go into that. That was the whole financial diaries project was focused on product development. And in some other countries, we more indirectly contributed to product development, and sometimes other parties use the diaries to base to use as information on the basis of which they developed new products. So most of these, where we focused most was in Myanmar. As I said, there we worked with 800 women, and it was on behalf of 2 financial service providers in partnership with UNCDF. And that was a whole year with a lot of talking up and down about how to improve the services for these people. So to give you an example, we saw in that situation that the women were in groups and they actually needed larger loans. You could see in the financial diaries data that the loans were only sort of scratching the surface for the size of their businesses. And also they felt very restricted by the solidarity that they had to provide in the groups. And so we actually bridged a gap to them serving, to them reaching the position of a small enterprise product, which existed, but they didn't meet the requirements of those products. And they didn't have any collateral and they didn't have formal registration. So on the basis of all the findings in the process of the diaries data collection, we learned that first they needed to be able to show that they could serve an individual loan. So that for that purpose, a top-up loan was designed. And the second stage was that those people who performed well on the top-up loan, they proceeded to a smaller sized individual loan where the actual track record of them in the group was used as an alternative collateral. Let's go to the next slide. So Lyft is Low Income Financial Transformation. It's a company founded in 2015, specifically to bring the financial diaries or diaries methodology to the financial sector and other sectors. In 2018, we started to develop FinBit, a special technology that is dedicated to help organizations, but also individuals to collect their diaries data, so that all the different benefits of diaries can be concisely shown. My colleague Heimonot in the breakout group, he is going to show you everything about FinBit. And it is actually a separate company now owned by Lyft staff. We go to the next slide. So here you can see the standard financial diaries process. I think Raoul explained it very well. The repeat feature of diaries, you can show it in the different, the green blocks, it represents weekly interviews. in the weekly interview, just as Raoul said, we collect all the transactions, income, expenses, etc. Now, the other blocks beneath it, these are thematic surveys and deep dives. These are extremely important, particularly for product development. In almost all our studies or projects, we don't only look at the transactions and the finances, but we want to understand the participants all around. We want to understand what kind of families they came from, what kind of ambitions they have, what kind of businesses they have tried, etc. And that really helps to properly understand it. So this diagram also shows you that it is a process. It sort of goes from first stage of understanding somebody to each time seeing new data and responding to it with new questions in the special surveys, and together, almost in a participatory way, together with the respondents, getting a good understanding. On the next slide, it shows how a product development process goes. So like with another Diaries project, you first start with learning and reflecting on what the situation is. And once the warm bond has started to emerge between the respondents or the diarists and the interviewers, you can start touching on much more personal things or complex things. And that is a good moment to start on the co-creation process for product development. So reflecting on the kind of data that people have already shared, then asking, so these kind of challenges you're meeting, how are you coping with them at the moment? What kind of support could you have on them? How could a financial service provider support you? And also a lot of discussions about products that they might be using at the moment, informal and formal, and what their shortcomings are, how they could be improved. And then the ideal situation would be that once the product is designed, the financial service provider also rolls out those new products or modified products, so that in the diaries we can see how it is really working out for the people who need them. So somebody who's in this process thinks up a new product and then uses the new product and gives feedback on what that is like. Okay, go to the next slide, please. To give you some idea what a diaries pattern looks like. This is quite a random respondent. It is Diaries since 2019. It's somebody who is one of the first users of Finbit. It is a corner shop. I don't even know whether it's Nigeria or Uganda or Zimbabwe, but this spikiness is very common. Almost every individual diarist has patterns that you might not expect. You do expect some spikes, but the longer period you look at them, the more you realize what a roller coaster their financial lives are. If we go to the next slide, you see we zoomed into just 4 or 5 weeks, well, I guess about 2 months of this person. And yeah, you also see ups and downs. But if you look at the bottom part, you see that is actually a very unrepresentative portion of their whole life when you look at the 3 years. And the peaks are much higher. The positive peaks of their income are much higher later on, which I just wanted to show you. In almost all the normal surveys that you might use, you wouldn't go back more than about 2 or 3 months asking people what exactly did you earn. And that is a tunnel vision. You don't really have a good overview of these people's lives. And maybe the next slide. let's go through this faster. Basically, in the diaries, you can really look at an individual's details. So you can see their income, but then you can split out income from business and income from non-work. So non-work would be like renting out something, or maybe having some other type of assets. And so you see in this person, there are very large peaks. The largest is from business, but the others are from non-work income. And yeah, that's the big power of, somebody's asking if they're related to COVID. Actually, COVID gave a lot of surprises, and the breakout room, the second breakout room that looks at data, it will actually show you somebody who did extremely well during the COVID period. Let's go to the next slide, because this is just to show how it splits. What is very important is that Diaries is extremely suitable for product development for several reasons. First of all, of course, it's a time series, so it shows you really the patterns, the dynamics, how people respond to different situations, and also the financial services they may be using. And that makes it sort of a good view on what is the reality, which any survey cannot uncover. The other thing is this trust. You build a trust, you build a very warm relationship, and so you can touch on complexities that others don't go. And there's also, because you keep on asking the same things, people start to reflect on their situation, and they become more aware of what is going on in their lives. So maybe you ask 1 week something, and then 2 weeks later, you actually get the answer after somebody thought about it. And this iterative process where you each time learn something new and you build on what you've discussed before, that's extremely strong feature of Diaries. And so, as I said, in Myanmar, we did a very exciting process with product development, and in that country, I think there are in total now 4 products in the market that are really used and at scale. They're all the result of the Diaries. In Congo, we actually started in a process of looking at client satisfaction of different financial service providers. And kind of almost naturally, a lot of the discussions started to turn to how products could be improved. And the financial service provider itself took the initiative to act on several of the learnings, and is starting to experiment with some modifications of what they're doing. And in our existence of a little bit more than 8 years, we could claim to have developed maybe 12 or 13 different products. And unfortunately, there's quite a number of them that never got to be used. And that brings me to the learnings. Very, very important part is that from the first day of doing something on Diaries, if you want to really involve a financial service provider and adopt what you're doing, they should be involved in the design of the Diaries, in the design of the respondents or the participants, and they should look at the data that is resulting and actively be the people asking additional questions. The other learning, very strong learning, is that if you want to understand about women, you should also know about men. So the situation in Myanmar with 800 women, it was very, very interesting. But with all the findings we had, we were not sure, is this a feature of a business in Myanmar or that men face as well, or is it something specific for women? So you should at least have like 1/4 or 1/3 of the counterpart to be able to understand what the women are like or what the youth are facing. We are also learning it's actually extremely hard to segment people. It is far more complex. So if you say, oh, barley farmers compared to vegetable farmers, a barley farmer is never only doing barley, and they might have livestock, or they might have tomatoes, or they might have a business next to it. And according to the mixedness of your income, you get your patterns. So if, a tomato cycle may be 3 months and a barley cycle is 8 months. So in that way, people are balancing out some of their cash flow differences. And so we're almost suggesting maybe let go of the segmentation and really look at the individual for something. I'll go to that in the future thing. To do this product development properly, you should have at least 1 year of diaries. Don't go into thinking, oh, in 3 months we can learn already so much. It's really important that there's a bit of space to reflect and to go back to issues. And ideally also you test what you have rolled out. And FSP, the financial service provider, is crucial in that. They must beforehand already intend to find a way to manually roll out a new product without having to change all their processes or systems. It's very important to have sufficient sample. Many of the financial diaries that we see is just 100 or 150. That's still interesting, but if you have a bigger sample, you can with more confidence say that it's reasonably representative. The financial service providers listen much more to larger sample data than just these 100. And I generally also think there is a significant risk if you just happen to have 100 people, it might actually be quite different from the overall group. But something that is very interesting is that financial service providers are so conditioned about their traditional loans. You know, you have a lump sum disbursed and then weekly repayment, but also clients are so used to it that they find it very hard to imagine other services. A line of credit, in general, people use it, they just take the maximum they can get and then keep it, because they're so afraid of not being allowed more loan that they cannot imagine that if you repay and you take it out and you repay that it will really work like that. And for the future, I think there is a very bright future for product development using financial diaries. First of all, we think that self-diaries is the future. So I mean with that a financial service provider is not just going to have a team of interviewers interviewing a couple of their clients, but the financial service provider offers diaries, the methodology, the FinBit ideally, to all their clients, and the clients use it for their own personal financial management, for their decision-taking, for building their economic understanding about themselves, and also for informing the financial service provider what their situation is like. And then in this kind of setup with thousands of people reporting their diaries, the financial service provider can themselves learn from their clients, get suggestions from clients, and it's kind of a continuum, a continuous process where the two sides communicate with each other. Very important is that first focus on improving the current products. Product development is quite a thing, and we always think a whole new thing is needed. But it is much more logical to first improve what is already there. It is easier to implement that, and it may be very effective. We believe that in the future, financial service provider will be able to be less rigid, not like 6-month loan and 1-year loan, but for all that matters, it can be 7 or 9 or 14-month loan. And repayment not fixed weekly, but some of it weekly and then a lump sum according to how the real income, how the business cycle of the client works. In fact, we are seeing a future where somebody's individual financial diaries data could be used with artificial intelligence, and then a fully individualized loan could be designed by a machine, and the risk of it could be calculated by the machine, and that person could each time get a better and more appropriate loan in each subsequent cycle. So that is our future vision. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Anne-Marie, for that great presentation. I know there's been a lot of chat questions in the chat here, and the hosts and the presenters have been responding, but I wanted just to give a few more minutes here for any additional questions from the audience for either of the presenters. If you want to continue to post them in the chat, and we'll respond there. But if there's anyone else that would like to just pop any question in right now. As the presenters mentioned, we will be shifting to small group discussion in just a minute. So if you want to, learn more about MSC's work, LIFT's work, or FinBit and the technology that both organizations have used for their financial diaries research, we're going to have a minute. We're going to be able to do that in just a minute. So let's see. With that, I think, Annika, could you please just pull the main presentation back up? I'd like to just pause on the slide about how we're going to do the breakouts here. So as we mentioned, we have over 60 participants, so we wanted to be able to break out and have some time to have more in-depth discussions with our panelists. In just a minute, my colleague Daniel is going to put up 3 options for breakout groups, and you'll see room 1, 2, and 3, and that's MSC and LIFT and FinBit. You'll be able to select the group that you want to join. And then when we're in the small groups, if we could just please turn on your video and unmute yourselves. We want to have this be a little bit less formal. We won't be recording the breakouts, but we will be capturing the chat so that if there's questions that we don't get to during the breakouts, we can try to respond to those at a later time and follow up with you individually. Someone asked whether the recording in PowerPoint would be available. Yes, they will be. It's going to be on the same event page where you registered. I'll pop that link in again, but those will be up by early next week so that you can take a look and see any of the slides that were shown today and go back to the recording if needed. Let's see. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Daniel to help us get into the breakout rooms. We'll have about 20 minutes in the breakouts. You'll have some broadcasts at the top just letting you know when we're going to be closing the breakouts and coming back to the main room just for a quick highlights report out, and then we'll talk about next steps in terms of follow-on clinic that we'll be having and discussion on this topic. So thank you so much. Please go ahead, Daniel. All right. I'm sure we all experience Zoom breakout room whiplash, and I apologize that ended so abruptly. We were in the middle of a great conversation that I was trying to capture furiously. But I think that we are able to connect everybody. I think emails have been shared, et cetera, in the chat, and we can share that out as well afterwards. But thank you for your great questions, the great conversation. I wanted just to turn to the small group facilitators. If you could say, perhaps one key highlight from your conversation, if possible, or 2, but let's try and go quickly so we can get to everybody. Let's see, Teresa, can I start with you just because I see you on the screen? You're muted.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead, we can hear you
Hello?
now.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Should I count my word?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I think I lost you.
Oh, just if you could tell us, one takeaway from your breakout discussion.
Oh, from our discussion. Sorry, my apologies. The voice is a little bit breaking out. I cannot hear very well.
Okay.
Okay.
If you would like, maybe John or Anne Marie could just tell us one key takeaway if you're not able to hear us well.
Yeah, I think we talked. Yeah, don't go ahead. It's better.
Yeah, we mostly talked about, we gave them more examples about products that have been made using Diaries data, and there were some questions on how we maintain the interest in the Diaries research that take quite a long time. And we explained that mostly that based on how you structure your research, you find that most people are interested to even continue past even the study. They want to continue giving us the data because they find that it helps them also. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure there was a lot more there, but maybe Rahul and Sonal, I'll pass it to you.
Sure. So we discussed something about the challenges that we face about to recruit for the Diaries research, and there we discussed about how to onboard the Diaries, what is the best way to motivate the Diaries to be part of this long-term research. And secondly, also we discussed about whether what is the importance of having a large-scale sample size and a small-scale one, and how we can use even a smaller sample size to get more nuanced understanding about the lives of the people. So I would say these two things came up during the discussion, and the variations of using Diaries method.
Okay, excellent. I think for the last group that I was in, Freyhut or Haimanat, if either of you, Miblisi, I don't see you on the screen, but actually I see Melisi, so maybe I'll ask you to present. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay. In our session, we talked about basically the technology we have been using to run Diaries in the past several years, and there has been questions about how that can be expanded to basically include a lot of different segments and do a lot of analysis based on different criteria to have full understanding about people's financial lives. That's the main point we got from the session. Thank you.
Great. And we're sharing more links here. Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to get to all the questions there. The last one was about the biggest challenges you've experienced and how we're working to overcome the challenges. I think that, there was a lot more that we could have discussed in all of the breakout rooms, but I wanted just to close with a couple of things. I think there's a lot of interest, which is great. And at FinEquity, what we're planning to do is have a virtual discussion so that we can continue this conversation and also invite colleagues that weren't able to join today. There'll be more information about that on the event page, and we'll send out an email, but I think we're going to try to do this on LinkedIn, which is kind of a newer platform we've been using. I mean, it's not a new platform, but for FinEquity, we've been experimenting with using LinkedIn more because it's just a little bit easier. We're all connected there. So we have a FinEquity group. I don't know, Annika, if you wouldn't mind posting our LinkedIn group for FinEquity. And I believe we'll try and have the conversation there in the coming weeks and sort of pick up some of these questions that were discussed and some that maybe we weren't able to get to today. It's a closed group, but it's open to anyone to join. We just kept it closed so that we can have a kind of, more focused discussion and sharing inside of the group. So please, sign up if you're not already a part of the group. The other thing I would like to discuss is after this discussion, we're going to be having a clinic. So sort of what we were able to begin to do within these breakouts, we'd like to continue in a more targeted clinic. Lyft and FinBit will be joining us for this. I believe MSC as well, although we didn't get to confirm. We are planning to do that in the latter half of May. We're looking at the week of May 22nd. So stay tuned for more information there. If you'd like to sign up, that will be a smaller group. We probably won't have 70 people on the line, but that'll be a little bit more focused perhaps to financial service providers and how they can use this information, and sort of digging in a little bit more to what information are you getting? How can it be tailored? I know in the last discussion with the FinBit group, there were a lot of questions about, can we add additional questions around the impacts of climate events on entrepreneurs? Can we add other additional questions that are relevant to a particular financial service provider that they would want to know beyond this kind of standard questions and information that that FinBit already has as a part of their platform? And I think something else that came out there was how financial service providers are already being matched with entrepreneurs based on the information collected from the entrepreneurs, and also developing a credit score that can be useful in helping to match entrepreneurs with specific loans. And I think that's something really interesting to discuss in the clinic. I also popped in there a link to the FinEquity resource guide that we developed on gender data and analysis. It's a curated resource, just pulling together some highlighted resources from our community. And so if there's, if you want more resources around not just financial diaries, but how to do good gender data and analysis, you can check out that resource guide. I think that the last thing I just wanted to say here is that as you exit, there'll be a survey that'll pop up just asking you to give us some feedback on this workshop. We would appreciate your feedback. We're always trying to improve our workshops and webinars, and would like to hear if this was a good format, lengthwise, et cetera, topic-wise. So please take a minute to do that. The speakers have been sharing their personal or their work emails here in the chat. If you feel comfortable doing so, please, all of the speakers, I think you've shared them in some of the breakout rooms, but not everybody has access to the breakout chat. So if you don't mind just sharing again, so that participants who perhaps didn't get a chance to ask you a question or, be in all of the breakouts could reach out to you after this is finished. So I want to just thank all of our presenters and speakers and panelists, especially the Lyft and FinBit team that came on a little bit later. I had the chance to, brainstorm this with Rahul and Sonal for quite some time, but they joined us just last week. And so I really appreciate all the effort and bringing the whole team on board. And it was really excellent to have, Rahul, Sonal, and Marie, John, Teresa, Mablisi, Haimanot, and Frehut here today. And just to thank all of the participants for joining. 90 minutes is a good chunk of your day. And so I appreciate you all making the time. And I learned a lot personally, and I'm really happy that I was able to organize this session with all of you. So with that, we will be ending right on time. But again, we'll be sharing the presentations and the recording with everybody. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. It was good.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.